Welcome everyone to week 6 of Workshop Wednesday on a Tuesday this time. My name is Mike Leitzke. I am your host, and I am so excited to be here with you. For those joining us live, and for those catching it on the replay, thank you for joining us. I wanted to say a quick shout out to the sponsors of Workshop Wednesday. So we have the ADLA circuit, the SCGC circuit, and the CWE circuit out in the Carolinas. And MusicChunks.com is our new presenting sponsor. So earlier today, I was doing my day job, and I had about 10 minutes or so between meetings that I had to be on. I do Zoom meetings pretty much all day long, and had about 10 minutes between it. So I went and logged on Music Chunks. I figured I hadn't really picked up the sticks much today, and I saw that Tom Rarick had uploaded 3 or 4 Blue Coats 2019 clips on there. So, I went on there, checked out the new platform. They've got the innovative percussion video right along with the music chunk the whole time, so you can watch the performers play it while you're learning it. And it's got the tempo slider and all of that stuff, so you can slow it down if you're not able to just jump on and play it right away at the fast tempo. So spent a little bit of time learning some Blue Coats 2019 beats, which was super fun, really cool show. And definitely encourage anyone to get onto musicchunks.com. I mean, it's a platform that's filled with some of the best composers that are out there for the marching arts. You got Tom Rarick on there. You've got Shane Gwaltney and Matt Jordan and Matt Filosa on there. Mike McIntosh with the Cavaliers with their PASIC performance that they have coming up this week. Those beats are on there. So all sorts of great stuff on there, and that library is growing every single day. So make sure you get on there, www.musicchunks.com, and get you a monthly subscription and learn some beats. All right. So for week 6 tonight, we're keeping it on the East Coast. We've got 3 individuals with us again tonight. So it's week 2 of the Workshop Wednesday Triple Threat. So joining me, we have Dan Schack, Travis Peterman, and Sean McElroy. How you guys doing?
What's up, Mike?
Thanks for having us.
Awesome. So good to see you guys. Now, I know the people that are on here might know a little bit about your backgrounds, but just to make sure that everyone is on the same page, let's go ahead and just give a little bit of a spiel about yourself, who you are, how you got to be where you are. We'll go ahead and get started with Dan.
All right, I'm going to keep this short and sweet because this is when Off the Rails starts. So I was a snare drummer in the Connecticut Hurricanes from 2005 to 2009. Then I went and marched United Percussion in 2010, marched Cavaliers, Drum and Bugle Corps 10 and 11, marched Rhythm X 11 and 12, and then went on and taught at Cadets Winter Percussion, 7th Regiment Drum and Bugle Corps, Crossman Drum and Bugle Corps, Carolina Crown Drum and Bugle Corps, currently George Mason University.
All right, awesome. Travis?
Yeah, that was good. This is where I totally failed on Dan's podcast, so I'm gonna do better this time. But I'm currently the percussion caption supervisor at Crown and the program director and battery designer for George Mason. I'm a snare drummer too, like Dan. Me and Dan were in a few of the same snare lines. I also marched the Reading Buccaneers and united with Dan, Rhythm X with Dan, and the Blue Stars with Tom Monks, which is who really kind of gave me my my boost into the independent teaching thing after I aged out. I did a winter at Imperial Dynasty when they were in A class, really kind of like ragtag thing. Went out to Dayton one time, and then CWP was created in 2014. I had been at C2 since 2012, and I was just kind of in the right place at the right time. And the job kind of fell to me. Was there for those 3 years, and when that folded, is when we all kind of ended up at George Mason. And I started at Crown in 2015. So
nice, awesome. Sean?
Yeah. Sean McElroy, grew up in Denver, Colorado. Started marching the Blue Knights in the early 2000s. Colorado was a great percussion scene around there. The Blue Knights had a percussion ensemble and a drum corps that had an incredible percussion section. And there was a lot of local people at that time, much different than today's drum corps where everybody's from everywhere. Back then it was a really community-based culture. And so I would be hanging out with my Blue Knights friends year round, not just on weekends. And it was incredibly cultivating experience for me. Met a lot of my mentors there. In 2003, I went to Cadets, aged out there in the bass line. I'm a bass drummer / snare drummer, I would say. I did bass. I always marched bass drum outdoors, but for all the indoor groups I was a part of, I marched snare line. I marched in the snare line. Started teaching cadets in 2004. I started off as the bass tech, spent about 7 years teaching there. And by the end, I was more focused in on working with more of the whole drum line on occasion, and really specializing in the marching technique. That's where I really kind of, cut my teeth figuring out how to, just make a drum line look good, and I was really lucky to kind of be able to experiment with some different things, and, make a lot of mistakes and learn from those mistakes out there. And I taught Phantom Regiment in 11 and 12, kind of same role, came in as a bass drum instructor, but naturally gravitated towards more responsibilities. In 2013, my friend Zach, he convinced me to come out and do a couple weeks with Crown, working with the bass drums. Loved it out there, learned a lot. And the next summer I was asked back full time, spent a couple years doing the bass drum tech thing. Again, like my responsibilities would always kind of modify or, evolve. And I eventually took kind of a co-caption head role there for a while. Currently I'm the ensemble coordinator for this next season, and probably bass tech as well, because with COVID, the activity's changing a little bit, so I might be doing a little double duty, happily, I should say. But I started writing drill back in 2000. I looked at it. It was 2003 is when I wrote my first show worth of indoor drill. And throughout all my time in drum corps and everything else teaching high school, I was always really interested in writing drill, studying groups and studying designers, and just getting better at drill writing. And what was it? 2017, Travis asked me to come out and write the drill for George Mason. And, the rest is history. I've been there. I've done like 3.5 seasons with them, I guess. And
yeah, the count's all messed up now. I don't know.
Yeah, I know it's hard. Yeah. I don't know what my count is, but yeah. So currently, during the summer, I still do a full tour with Carolina Crown, and then through the rest of the year, I judge a lot and I write a lot of drill. I have a few programs I consult with, but mostly, during the non-drum corps months, it's really writing drill and judging are the main things I'm doing in the activity right now. So
that's awesome. I think I've had all three of you out to SCGC and CWE at some point, so we'll have to get you guys out to SoCal now.
Yes.
Perfect.
Awesome. Well, cool. Well, let's go ahead and let's jump in. Let's talk some George Mason University here, and a little bit of Cadets Winter Percussion too, because I know some of you guys were on that team. So I know we guys have the Crown connection with each other, but really, like, how was this team formed, and how did it come to be what it is?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. It definitely started at CWP. And again, it just kind of fell to me. I know they asked Colin to write the battery stuff when that started. I'm pretty sure they talked to Tom Unks, and those guys were, just busy doing other things. Johnny Trujillo actually had the gig for like a month and a half, and then it became an issue that he was an IP artist. So it kind of just kept falling down the rung until eventually it got to me. And so I was already on the team. I was supposed to, I think I was just supposed to be the battery coordinator for the first season in open class. And, it ended up being a lot of the Cadets 2 kids, because I was teaching there, a lot of the Imperial Dynasty kids from the winter before, University of Delaware was a huge kind of influx to it. So there was like a really solid local base of talent that was there. And Dan was up in Connecticut. He came down and he was the snare tech. But that's just the year we kind of just started, designing. Andrew Montero wrote the front book all 3 years. That first year, Rich Hammond was kind of like the de facto program coordinator, I guess, but it was very, just kind of on the cusp, like weekend to weekend, we just get there and we would just go. We had the kids there, we were all in there. Dan and I, we had just aged out. It's not like we had studied show design or what to do in a WGI show. We really didn't know. We were just kind of going off instinct. And, we didn't compete against anyone either until prelims in Dayton that year. So we just had no idea. We were just plugging away the whole time. And we ended up winning, setting the open class record for a year. And we just kind of went from there. There were 3 years of CWP. It was very like kind of in and out at the top. Me and Dan and Andrew were 3 of the only people that were there all 3 years. We worked with Mark Sylvester, Jeff Sacktig. So there were a bunch of different influences. I by no means take, full credit for us. There were plenty of other, good people that were on board, but it was always very exploratory. In a sense, we were able to kind of establish a culture that we built on for 3 years. And in other ways, we just kind of kept getting reset. They had 5 directors in the 3 seasons. And I was the last one for like 3 weeks. I was the director, but I wasn't, I was just the one that was there. And then that folded, and we had, obviously that was really crushing. We kind of thought it might happen. It wasn't a complete surprise, but it just kind of came down literally the night before spring training started at Crown in 2016. So had to like wake up the next morning and start this new season, but there were a bunch of CWP alums that were there, and obviously just finding out. So that was a tough day for sure. And then probably within a couple weeks, we were talking to Chris Gary, who was the director of George Mason at the time, and he was kind of looking to take a step back from the design side. So he brought me on as the program coordinator and battery arranger there, and I brought Dan in and Sean as well. And that's kind of when we started designing there. We did that for a year, and then Chris kind of retired per se, and I applied and got the director gig. And so from there, we've just kind of been trying to build. We've been able to build a more kind of streamlined like culture, like thing, like building on itself for sure. It's gone pretty linearly over the past few years. I think it was really a shame that we didn't make it to Dayton in 2020, because we were really going to, I think, reach a new point in a lot of ways. And that's not just competitively, it's not always about the numbers, but just about the attitude of the group and just how smoothly things could go from an administrative perspective. And obviously with the show design and with the staffing, there's so many different things that kind of come into play that really have an effect on the success of the group. So it did kind of feel like we built for 3 years at CWP, and then we kind of went back down and started building again. And, then, here we are. I don't know if I answered the question. I could be.
So the 3 of you have been consistent now for the past 3 or 4 years. Front ensemble folks, I know Mike Bishop worked with you guys for a year. Is it back to being Andrew, or who's working with you guys now on the front?
Yeah. So with the front thing, at the time that CWP kind of splintered, we just went in a different direction. I was working with Mike at Crossman, and we wanted to give him that chance to move into a design role at the world-class level. And we had really that year in 17, the outside perspective of it is different than the one on the inside, but it went okay. On the inside, it was very, very difficult, just being at a new group, that's especially a university group. But we kind of learned a little bit. I think that whole first year was just learning about what is this group actually, because it's not the traditional indoor drumline. We had to learn a whole new structure because it's attached to a university program and office. And then we hired John Zunig in 18. He's a West Coast guy, RCC. I believe he played timpani there. And he's a Mapes and Grom guy. His music was really clean, and his process and his workflow, like super, super buttoned up, super professional, extremely easy to write to, choreo, drill, battery beats. I think there was a lot of great stuff, but we're looking at the reality of what we're always trying to do, which is be the best and be the most creative and honestly be the most custom for our students and for the area. So we were like, and we the thing with Andrew sort of took its natural path, and we sort of found each other again. And then we were like, all right, yeah, it was like that full circle. So then in 19, which is a fringe year, was his first year back with us. And he offers something very, very special activity. And I always call him like the faceless kind of the dude in the background who everyone's kind of, Dan, Travis, Sean, the people that are sort of out there doing judging gigs and meeting a lot of people. Andrew is like a serious creative engine for what you see. And if you notice between CWP 14, 15, 16, and then GMU 19, 20, those were like more cohesive, I think, overall, just because it was like Travis and him and me. And then obviously we always had different drill writers. So bringing Sean in, we had more consistency already. So it's been cool to work with all these different people and kind of end up back with this guy who we feel super invested in. And I think he's a very, very talented individual.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. I mean, it's cool to see you guys have that kind of full circle moment and, kind of what you guys have been able to create, especially those years at CWP and then Fringe and moving forward. I mean, these are programs that, like, for those that know me, I watch band in a lot of different forms very frequently throughout the year. I see a lot of band. And for a show to really stick out and like stick with me in a visceral way, like, has to be something. And that the Dream Electric show, and like I saw the Deconstructed, I'm forgetting what the title of it was because that was before Dream Electric, right?
Deconstructed.
That was the
Yeah.
title.
All right. Deconstructed. Like that was a show where it was like I kind of like raised my eyebrow. I was like, this is there's something happened here. I don't know what it is exactly, but the Dream Electric, I watched that show and it was just like, and like I'm an analysis judge. I'm not a GE guy, generally speaking. So I'm watching this show and I'm just like, I don't know what this is, but I'm like all in on it. Like it was just, I don't know. It's just one of those shows where it's like you watch it the first time and it just affects you some way. And watching Fringe and some of the other shows that you guys have done throughout the years, they have this kind of theme of being a little bit more avant-garde, maybe a little bit more open for interpretation. There's not, it's just not really like telling you exactly what you should think about what's happening right now, but it resonates with you in a certain way. How do you guys create that?
Yeah, I mean, when I think about some of the shows you're naming, I just think about the people that were sort of behind them. And I think about those people and I could like rank how like abstract or concrete a single person is, honestly approaching different factors of design. So like I can tend to be someone who is more in like an abstract space. As a teacher, probably not at all, but with designing and thinking of concepts, it's definitely trying to be slightly more like what's the metaphor, what's the symbols behind things. I think Travis provides a perspective of we need to be likable across all standpoints, that anyone could understand what we're doing, and that helps balance out myself or Andrew Montero, who's further than me, he's outside the spectrum that we can measure. And then Sean, I would say it goes different directions based on the task. When we're talking about props or uniforms and set design, Sean is like all math, all numbers. And I mean, same with the drill, right? But I don't think like from a concept standpoint, that's necessarily where you come from, Sean. What do you think about that? I don't know.
Yeah, so for me, I've always felt with this team that Dan has kind of been the guy that's really managing the overall effect of what we're doing. And where I think I specialize a little bit more in the nuts and bolts of the structure of the show, and having honestly made so many mistakes in that regard of things over the years. And to me, I've always with George Mason and with this team, I've always appreciated that. I don't know if we've ever even talked about it. I think we have, but it was pretty natural that it seemed like, hey, if we want to stand out and give the members, not only stand out amongst the community, but give the members a truly one of a kind experience. We can't be like other groups out there. We can't be like the groups that we want to compete with. And we've always had this ambition to be somewhat different, you know, going back to like the avant-garde comment. And I don't think we're doing it for the sake of being different. I think we're doing it for the sake of being unique and appealing. And also for me, that approach has drastically exercised my skill set. I mean, the way I wrote drill in 2017 to compare to the way I wrote drill this last winter, completely different. I mean, it's not even close. And like, and for me, I mean, that took a lot. I mean, it takes frustration sometimes because I'm fighting my inner instincts to be able to produce what I know is going to be good for the whole team and for our progression. And it's and that's what I've appreciated about it. And like every single season with George Mason, I feel like I learned like 10 years worth of like every single season I get to the end and I'm like, man, there's so many things I want to do differently and better, you know, in the following year. And that's really invaluable to me. You know, it's difficult, but it's productive, and it's, you know, it's ultimately it's desirable.
Dude, I agree. I think it is difficult. And like Travis and I have had this conversation, like the 3 years that you look at CWP, we did Copy of we did Deconstructed, and we did Dream Electric. And there's like a flow and a progression of that. And then when we went to GMU and that folded, all of a sudden, like it was like a little bit about our age, I think too, is we turned so inward because we had such an erratic experience at CWP with the admin that we were like, when we were designing those shows and things were going great, I could not tell you why that was happening at all, other than we were just like we were like on a rocket, like seriously. And it was like, okay, let's like do this body block. There was no vision. It was like we were just making it up. And then at the end, we're like, nice, okay, like yeah, there were motifs and whatever. Like no, we were just literally making it up because we had no choice, and it was like desperation. And then in 17. No, we had no clue. Me and Travis was like, should we do this? Should we try that? Should we do this? And we're just like, you know, had a couple people that would provide us with some opinions, but it was very, very reckless and just worked out. And then at Mason, it was like, we really want to fix how we do this for the long term. So it was like a super turning in of our whole process. And then I think because of that, we kept all the oddity and all the like viscerality and like abstractness about those past shows, but we were able to like look at the things as they connect year to year now. And I think that's been really big for our progression is we did Fringe and then we did the Outlaw like completely on purpose, that we did a rap show and then we did a Western, that we were playing with the genres, that we're playing with these styles that kind of you could expect a little bit out of, and then obviously you twist the genre, and that's why genre exists, because you get to play with the conventions. So when we start to realize what we're actually doing year to year, we're just a lot more purposeful with it. And I think that gets to the heart of what Sean's talking about. The drill is like the cowboy drill and the hip hop drill better not look and feel the same. And like we all understood that. So it's like, dude, this can't be that. So it was almost like when he talks about like us trying to be original, I always feel like it's against the things we have done. And trying to not put out shows that are just like redundant versions of themselves. And that's like way hard because we like our front on ranger, Andrew, he learns new music every year. He like learned how to write a rag. He learned how to write trip hop, Frank Ocean style. He's not just like, this is my front ensemble approach. So it's like, it's just a lot more work for all of us. So
yeah,
I don't know.
I think it leads to it too. I think that just like it wasn't even trying to be different, especially not at first. Like it was literally our most like basic instinct at first, and then like Dan said, we started to learn how to plan that more, and it just still became, you know, it doesn't look like other things because we don't know how to do it that way. Like I don't know how to write a book like John Mapes or Tim Jackson or like, and those guys are awesome. And I love their stuff. I just don't know how to do it. So I don't try to, you know what I mean? I know Andrew is the same way with the pit music.
Yeah. Just be you.
Right.
Yeah. All right. So like functionally, what does your guys' design process look like? Like if going into the outlaw season or going into the fringe season, I assume you guys are probably going to meet with each other, maybe towards the tail end of the drum corps season, or especially after drum corps is done, and start to flesh out what you guys are going to do. What does that first meeting look like, or that first call look like to, when you're actually putting it on the floor? What's that process?
Yeah. It's different every time, honestly. I wish it was as like clean as like July 1 show is done, but like for like fringe, we didn't really know what that show was throughout the course of the summer. We knew that we had like a visual idea, and then we had a song, which was the song Siegfried. And then we found a way to tie that all together through the urban space that we chose to represent our performance in. And we found that it happened very from the outside in. Not to, I guess that's the concept of that show, but it literally, that kind of did work like that. That's weird to think of it like that. For the Outlaw, I think it was like April of 2019. I was like telling everyone we're doing a cowboy show, because I was taking a genre class in grad school. And I was just learning about genre. I actually don't like Western movies. They're boring as hell. I do like Quentin Tarantino movies, which we, of course, I mean, everyone should. So I like the genre twist that he does. And I think like coming out of Fringe, we're like, we have to do something like this again. It's so perfect for our team. And then it was like, but let's do a completely, opposite approach. And I think some of these things, like the Dream Electric is based on Philip K. Dick's book, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? Memory Archive is based on podcasts I heard about people recording messages to their loved one and then not releasing it to them until like specific dates after they're dead. Fringe was I think Sean Vega was trying to make us all feel better at the PAB, talking about how we're going to be able to perform to the outside of the arena when we're at Disney, and how that opens up all these creative opportunities. We're like, okay, we're going to do that. That's how Fringe started. And then the Outlaw was definitely like Kill Bill Volume 1 with the bride, and doing a twist with like she kills him at the end, and just a very common sort of plot, but in a style like, especially with like, it doesn't happen in a vacuum, because out of 19, we're like, we need to have more cohesive music package that allows us to demonstrate more virtuosity as players. So then we chose a show that the music allowed that, but it all fit idiomatically. Yeah. Because at Fringe, we weren't thinking about that. We're like, this is cool, but then it didn't work as well for the players. So like, I think a big part of the Outlaw was like, if we pick these classic, Morricone tunes or Nancy Sinatra or some of the other tunes we picked, it's going to allow a lot of virtuosity to the playing. So like, there's more, it's more than just the concept. We're thinking about the strengths of our group in every year, I would say, especially the last couple of years, we've been able to dial that in more. Is like, you can't just design in a vacuum. We're kind of thinking about what we can do and what we want to do with the group and where we want to bring them. So not super linear. It definitely happens like around, I mean, we really start meeting in July generally. But like some of these shows we knew, I knew in my mind in April. Travis might not have believed me, and he was like, oh, I don't know, Outlaw. But then we finally got there.
That never happened. We
never
disagree.
We didn't like the name, the Outlaw. We were in the coffee shop across from Gardner Webb, whatever it's called, Riverside or wherever. It changed owners actually in the last 2 years. We love that place, but we were like, oh, the Outlaw, blah blah. We're going back and forth with the name, and then we ended up settling on it and going in that direction. But it's like, I think, I don't know. Sometimes it's the music, sometimes it's like an overall concept. I think generally when we lean towards musical inspiration, it usually works out better. I don't know what people think about that.
Yeah, I agree. It's kind of like water flowing down, and we kind of like go where the most water can get by. Like wherever the good idea is, we kind of chase it. I know from my perspective, I'm really like, I'm an anxious guy, and I'm all about like setting the dates and like knowing that if we don't have this done by this date, then we're going to be screwed to try to do the next thing on the list. And it's really just like kind of constantly chasing our own tails with being, relaxed and able to be creative and not box the creativity in, but also get things done in some sort of like organized and timely fashion. So we set the group up to succeed. And I think that plays more of a part in the success in WGI than I think a lot of people think about. You can have an all-star staff, you can have all-star members, but if you don't have like the rehearsal schedule laid out and like a facility lined up, and just if the show music and stuff isn't coming out in a timely fashion and to where you're prepared to teach it efficiently, you're not setting the members up to succeed, and I think we've been constantly getting better at that at GMU, and that's why it's been getting better at GMU, I guess.
Yeah. Do you guys tend to be pretty flexible as the season goes on and you get your first, rounds of feedback from people? Will you change things in the show, or are you pretty set on your vision for what it's going to be and you don't really want to deviate from that too much? What's that process like for you guys?
I want Sean to answer this first, because Travis and I tend to be in a lot with Mason, like almost all the time. So I am actually more interested in Sean answering to see. I don't think we're super reactive to tapes, but what do you think, Sean? What is it? What do we do with that?
I mean, honestly, some of our best ideas have come like in December or later. I remember the memory archive. Really, the story that ended up being that show happened a little bit before January 1st that year. I remember the Airbnb we were in. I remember Jonathan played us a thing and we were like, whoa, that's it. Okay, like, let's make that our ballad. And then one judge commented, I think it was Ron Harden, commented, hey, you could stretch that over the length of your show. And it was like, yeah, let's do that. I think for the Fringe, we took a lot of risk in Fringe, and with that risk, I think maybe towards January, February, we realized that we've got to dial some of that back. And we decided to take other risks, like throwing our second bass drummer in a shopping cart and pushing him out to the front of the floor.
Like, yeah, one risk for another.
Yeah. But it was, but in the risk lies the learning experience, I think. And, but I think to answer your question directly, Mike, I think we're pretty flexible. What's allowed us to be flexible, particularly especially this last winter that ended up happening. The more ahead we got in our design process, the more we were able to meet Travis's deadlines, the better decisions we were able to make come January, February, and March, and those decisions always benefited the group. I don't look back on any of those decisions on any seasons we made and say, man, no, that was like, we made that change and that was wrong. No. I think we're really mindful of the member experience and all this, not just from a teaching standpoint in terms of like we do have a desire to make sure that we're not doing changes up until the last weekend. Now, I mean, there's been I think the memory archive, we got pretty close to the end and we had like just finished the show, but we were still mindful. But in the past 2 years, I mean, we just keep on getting better at working with each other, at meeting our own self-imposed deadlines. And, again, going back to the member experience, I think one thing I like about George, like Dan really does a good job of keeping us filtering through, like, are the members going to be proud to wear this uniform? Are they going to feel good out there? Are they going to like this show? Are they going to get, because that's a judgeable element now, the members' investment and believability of what they're doing out there. And and I think honestly, that's been the big success at George Mason, especially these past 2 seasons. Like at the end of Fringe, I mean, the identity and the loyalty, the ownership from the members of George Mason was top of the world class. I mean, it really was. Like and then it's a shame that we didn't get to come out this last winter, because we had built on that ownership, and we were about to display the next step of that. And the thing I'm most proud about George Mason is how proud the members are of that program, and how invested they are in it. And that is hard to do when we're trying to learn how to design together, when the people that we know we're trying to compete with have been doing this for literally over 20 years, and they've been doing it well for 20 years. And like the pressure involved in that, knowing that we're trying to deliver a comparable experience to our members, despite that our own personal experience, or compared to our other competitors, it's a lot of pressure. But I don't know, it's a real healthy environment. And, I kind of veered off a little bit, going back, yes, we're pretty flexible with our show design choices.
More flexible, the more planned out we are. Absolutely. Agreed.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, me and Dan have a joke from years ago. We say range, like, we are all the way over here and we're also all the way over there, for better or for worse, but we try to do the best of all kinds of range of the spectrum, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think literally, like, this is gonna sound wild, but I think like for me, I end up being like the very top level of ideas, like Sean was talking about. So I'll understand the planning and the idea from the top, and then it will trickle in its respective places, and that kind of allows me to show up when I'm like choreographing the drum line, and I kind of don't have to plan that much. I do listen to the music and I think about the counts, and me and Travis will talk about the counts live. Like as I'm sorting through it, we're working organically, but it's because I was at the front end and then I'm at the back end actually doing the body. And I think Travis is the same, where he's writing these scores with like intricate detail. The Sibelius files have the correct playback so that you have MP3s that are like doing the music justice. So then when we show up, he can change whatever he wants because we're comparing it to something real that we've actually spent time listening to and getting familiar with. So when you hear it live, it's very different, and I think same thing with your question about how flexible are we? Well, when things get better over the course of a season, sometimes you need to beef things up. We've added beef to books, especially the last year, or, as we transition to the Crown portion of this conversation, with Crown, like things in December versus June versus August or late July, like forget it. It's so different, when your ears are dialed in like that. So I think the flexibility is honestly necessary on some level at all times. But for us, it's definitely been like, when we're feeling good, then it's like you're just relaxing. It's like you gotta get on vacation, but you have to remember you like locked your door before you left.
Yeah, that's an interesting analogy there. I like it. So what has the reception been like? Like, I mean, I know just from my personal experience, I've really enjoyed the shows that you guys have done, but I know that, when you're doing maybe something that's more abstract or not so prescriptive, some people might react negatively to that, or, they don't know what to think. So they want you to tell them what the effect should be. And, how has that worked for you guys throughout the years?
Do you want me to go? I guess I'll go.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's to be frank, it's been very mixed. When we get good judges, we tend to get good reads. When we get judges that are cognitively inflexible, we tend to get bad reads. So we get reads from people who are independent world-class color guard judges, and they can talk me through every single step of the show, and they get it, and they're totally there. And then we get someone who is like a nuts and bolts visual person, and it's just they can't really react to the choreography. They can't really react to the style and the way that our visual style is always idiomatically placed and contextualized. It's just the drum lines become a blur of drum lines, and they're not parsing those styles. So I really think that, hey, if we think we're doing something sophisticated, it sounds like you agree on some front, at least some years, you need a sophisticated read. So sometimes it's like the tool they're trying to use is not the right tool for our program. Again, because we're not just trying to spit out something that just like can be read, and some of our stuff needs two reads to be honest. So I don't know. What do you two think about the reception?
Yeah, I agree. It's been very polarizing at times. And at first, when we were young at CWP, it was super confusing. Like one of the most prominent ones was Dennis DeLucia at the Trumbull Regional in 2015 told us we were what is wrong with world class. And to be fair, we probably were that day. It was all loud, like we hadn't really shaped the book yet. And one of the things, like, to go back to the process, like I think most years so far we haven't been as good as we could have been soon enough, I guess. So like some of those early season reads, we're hearing a lot of the things that we know. It's like, all right, yeah, it's dirty, it's loud, we tour, that doesn't make sense, we know. So that is like kind of added fuel to the fire of like, hey, we need to get done. Like 2020, this is the first time, our first show, we went out and we did the whole show at the first show, and we got like a legit read at it. So I think we've had decent success when people get a full read on the show. Fringe was maybe the most polarizing one because it seemed to be like an age thing, if I could put a label on it. Like the older people were kind of less enthused by it, like, oh, this is too different. You don't do kind of like the traditional tropes of drumline. This is hip hop. This is not my genre. So therefore it's not worth as much as some of the others. So I mean, we had some crazy sub caption splits that year. I think Matt Stevens had us second in a sub caption, right? And then we were like out of finals to some other people in sub caption.
We beat Rhythm X and Broken City. We beat Rhythm X across the board in visual GE our first round, and we beat Broken City in the left box the first round.
Who ended
and
up
then
winning.
like in music, people, and they ended up winning that year. And then some people had us at like 19th in like music or something like that. So it was very, very weird. And like some of that is warranted, but it also was this unwillingness to go further, I would say. So I don't know.
So that's an interesting point. And that's something that I hear about a lot is, when you're doing a double panel show and you have those wild sub caption splits. And I'll be honest, like when I'm judging a show that's a double panel, that's a really scary thing. And that's something that's cognizant in my mind when, something happens and it's like a group comes out and they pop a great show and it's like, all right, I'm going to give it up to them. And then you kind of look over at your colleague and it's like, I don't know what they're going to do. This could look pretty crazy here. And, I've always heard from, Chris Heston and Mark Thurston that, they do the double panel because when you take the average of all things, you're going to kind of end up where you should be. The system works itself out. So, how did you guys handle that situation, or how have you handled that?
I kind of don't know if I agree with that, at least from my standpoint, because music weighs way heavier than visual, does it not? Isn't it 60-40? Yes. So it doesn't really shake out to an average because it's music heavy. I mean, period. So I think that was a fault in 19, especially. It was very visually original, as you could tell from Matt's read. And then musically, as Travis said, but we did play stuff, I don't think we were like bad. We weren't filthy, but we weren't necessarily like stopping and clearing out the space for the snare line to like rip this, long lick that you just look at the snare line and nothing else. We had a much more immersive, integrated kind of offering. So yeah, much more cohesive, and just, again, thinking about like the whole thing fitting together. Cause we wanted to feel like a play or like a movie, not like a snare lick, like even when it is a snare lick. And I think 20 was that. But how do we deal with it? I think we've trusted, when we trust ourselves and each other, like we fight each other a lot more than we fight the judges. You know what I mean? Like we usually know, like if we get a really bad read from a judge and we know it's a bad judge, we're not getting hung up on it. And we'll usually have a great critique with them, telling them everything that they got wrong, because I could judge my own show better than they can. And, the amount of analysis happening, like, as you said, me, Travis, Sean, and then Carolyn too, we all judge. So we do sit on the other end of this, and it's amazingly healthy to do throughout the indoor season. I always come back with such a better perspective. So I think us judging is super helpful. Sean always comes in, he's like, over here, look over here, over here. He's like all over it because he's been judging and seeing groups, whether world-class or not, doesn't matter. But, and then when we see Tom Rarick and he talks about the front book, like, yeah, we take that seriously. When you talk to Omar, we take it seriously. We know who is, relevant to our process or who isn't. And honestly, the people who are giving critique in a respectful way are the ones we listen to. If you tell us, if you're asking if our show that is clearly the Salvador Dali painting Persistence of Memory, if you ask if it's about cooking meth in the desert, like Breaking Bad, I'm going to disregard that. I am going to be mad about it. I am going to be mad about it. And I'm still, that was a real example, and I'm still mad about it. But it's like, okay, cool. You're very over this. I get it, So honestly, I think because we judge, we like look at those tapes more analytically than I think the judges are looking at our show sometimes, which sounds wacky. I don't know.
Well, no, I think we see what they're seeing. Like, for example, Tom Rarick literally last year it was the Powhatan regional, and great regional, love Neil and everything they do down there, but a world-class group just isn't going to sound like what they do in Dayton. Right. So we're not necessarily equipped to sound correct in there without totally reorchestrating, redoing a bunch of balance that we're just is not worth doing for that local show, you know? So we have to take it with a grain of salt. So part of it is like, you know, those judges that we maybe favor their opinion more or are more influenced by their opinion, but also like, all right, what was the context of what they just saw? You know, we can take those comments and say, all right, he saw this or heard this, he probably meant this, that's valid. Let's go in and fix it this way. Maybe not how he said to fix it, but this is probably what they meant, I guess.
Yeah. And I think that's a really healthy way to look at things. And because, you know, anyone can offer a suggestion that ends up being a really good idea, even if they aren't necessarily the most proficient judge or, you know, something like that. Like, great ideas can come from anywhere. And I really respect the fact that all of you go out there and you actually get some reps behind the recorder every single year, because then I just think it creates a little bit more empathy from both sides, you know, especially when you get into the drum corps side of things, and, you know, the competition, you know, is really, really turned up there. And I just think you get to look at things from a different perspective. And I remember specifically for myself, you know, when I was writing at Palmetto and when I was at Mount Juliet, you know, just my viewpoint on design and how I looked at the shows was so different than when I really started judging. You know, it just gave me a second to like step back and look at things. And then I would look at my shows and be like, oh, now I get why they were saying that. I didn't like that comment at the time, but man, I wish I could go back 3 years and like do that segment over again, because we could make it way better. Yep. And I don't know if people are necessarily afraid to try to judge, because I mean, it is a very different skill set than teaching or designing. I mean, it requires knowledge from both of those buckets, but the ability to communicate quickly in the moment, react appropriately, and say complex dialogue in a manner that's digestible really quickly and not offensive is really difficult to do. Yes. So I do applaud you guys for doing that. And I wish that we would get more people, even on the local level, to come in and just try it out, just trial judge, because you're going to learn a lot.
Yeah, I love it. I just don't think you ever have to be mean as a judge. It's like such a, like it's, I'm not going to say it's for indoor specifically that's cushy. You guys have these long days at the end, but you're the one sitting there getting to just love it. You're like, this is dope. I'm watching all these great groups. They're bringing it to me. Think about what the person has been through. Like, what's the director been through to just get the props in the floor, the kids to Dayton, and then you're like basically crapping on them, even if they're bad. Even if they're bad, you don't do that, because just getting to the show and having a functioning group is a win. So I just don't see, like, you know, I agree with everything you said about you have to have all these skills, but it's like when you can be witty and be mean, or you can be witty and be funny and be nice. Like, I don't think it means you have to be offensive like that. It's just weird how some people are like, I don't have time for this. What is this? Blah.
Yeah. And like the approach that I've always taken is, even if they're not the best group, if it's an A-class group that's their first time coming out and doing a show and going to these circuits around the country, you don't know everybody's backstory. So everyone has successes that you can celebrate as a judge. And even if they don't play clean, or they don't march in time, or their show design isn't good, there's something that's out there that you can grab onto that's going to inspire them as a director or as a staff member to move forward, or as members to realize maybe they don't feel good about the fact that they're not playing clean. They've got ears. They know what it sounds like. But they hear something from a tape where it's like, you recognize that one little thing that they'd been working on that week, and that's going to give them that inspiration. That's something that I've really thought a lot about as I've kind of come up through the judging ranks. And that's something that I really feel strongly about. It's like, it's a customer service position. Like, I'm here to give you guys the feedback, good and not so good, and, you know, tell you what I thought, what my perception was for that specific day. But with that said, it's not my job to just crap on the groups and talk about all the bad stuff. Anyone can do that. I want to get in there and I want to find out what you guys are doing, find out what it's going to be in 2 weeks from now, and figure out, you know, what else is going on in there that I can continue to dig in and reward the kids on.
Absolutely.
That's awesome. I mean, yeah, sincerely appreciate that. As you know, on the educator side, especially DCI, I feel like it's, you know, it's got to be harder. I mean, would you say it's harder to judge DCI or WGI from your perspective?
I mean, they both have different challenges to them. The logistics of doing DCI, I think, make it more challenging. Also, just, you know, the competitive nature of DCI is different than WGI. I mean, WGI, everybody's living at home, they're sleeping on a normal bed, you know, they're eating good food. You know, DCI, you know, the lifestyle is just a little bit different.
Yeah, you got these sun-baked dudes coming in there expecting, you know, six
Ah!
of us expect to win every night. It's like, Mike, why
Nine
aren't
tenths?
Yeah.
9/10 down, Mike.
Yeah, and I mean, I've been super fortunate that, you know, I haven't really had too many people, to my face at least, you know, get really intense. But
That's
I
good.
mean, like, I'm always really cognizant of that, of the competitive nature of the activity, and I always try to lead my critiques with, what did I miss? Like, tell me what I didn't get. And I feel like that immediately just like diffuses the situation, because it's no longer like, you didn't miss, you missed this, you missed this, you missed this. And it's like, all right, let's have a collaborative discussion, because that's really what it should be, you know, especially in an activity like the summer, where it's like, I might see your group 6 times. This might be the only time I see him. You know, if I'm going to see you guys 6 times, like, I want to know what's coming down the pipe. I want to know what I didn't see. So that way, when I see him next time, I know I need to start on the side 235 rather than on the side 120, you know, so that way I'm already set up for success. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So, I mean, I hope that more people will start to, you know, dip their toe into the judging pool a little bit. I mean, it's been awesome to have you guys do that, you know, with my local circuits. And, you know, I think that more people that design shows and teach would benefit a lot from, you know, just starting to get those reps. And you're just going to change the filter with which you view shows. So cool. Well, with that said, let's jump into the summer and let's talk about Carolina Crown a little bit. So the three of you guys are on the team there. What are kind of your roles? Like, Travis, I'm specifically interested in what your role is, because I know that you and Tom are kind of co-arrangers. What is that process like?
Yeah, so it's been awesome working with Tom like that. You know, I've been to some of the design meetings over the past few years too. So mostly just kind of like listening in and you know, chipping in a little bit, but listening to kind of the overall goals of things. And then when the writing actually starts, Tom usually throws me like the window feature sections, and everything we go back and forth on the score, and like I'm proposing edits to his stuff, he's sending me edits to my stuff, and it's like a very collaborative process with the battery book. So we keep a very meticulously updated score from, you know, when it starts being written in January or whatever, all the way through usually like the very end of July is when we're making like these little updates to it.
All right, yeah, that's interesting. Now, when you were first brought into Crown, you were not doing that role, or you were?
No, I was the snare tech right away in
Okay.
2015. Yeah.
So how did you evolve from snare tech to co-arranger?
Well, the 2016 off season right after drum corps was like some of the craziest. I can't even talk about most of it just because of the
Boston swallowed every 1 year that summer.
Yep. When that happened, the fallout from that at Crown was really pretty crazy. And it kind of, for a little bit there, no, I can't even say that. I just kind of had been talking to Tom and Jim Coates, and they decided that after Tom Monks left that, you know, they didn't want to go outside, and they just kind of promoted me to that position from within, is the most easy way to say that.
So Tom was in that, you know, co-arranger role previously with Tom Hannum?
Yeah, and I don't know exactly what their process was, but Tom Unks went to Crown in 2015, and he was the caption head, and yeah, again, he would do some of the windows, and I don't know how much they went back and forth on stuff, but yeah, so he was there in that role for 2 years that I was a snare tech, and then when he left to go back to cadets, it just kind of created that position, and it just kind of happened.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. And then Dan and Sean, you guys both do body from a creative standpoint?
Yeah, Sean, talk about, well, we both have odd niche roles. So like, Sean, go ahead. You go first.
Yeah. So my current position with Crown, I have nothing to do with the design at Crown. In fact, oftentimes I'll like wear blinders to the design as much as I can as we're going through the summer. And then like midway through July, I'll watch the show like with those goggles, and I'll turn to Dan and I'll be like, dude, this is what I'm seeing. And like, we'll have that conversation of realization. Like, but I really, my niche in Crown has to do with running the full ensemble and kind of organizing the day-to-day agenda for the full core essentially. But I still work with the percussion quite a bit. I'm still kind of like the marching like I run ensemble rehearsal, but then I teach the drumline drill in the morning, so I mean it's real, I mean literally like bottom of the totem pole to near the top, in one given day. So I think the thing that's cool at Crown is that Travis, Dan, and myself, we really put in the hours and demonstrated the care. And I think it was really natural for us to kind of evolve our positions into what they currently are, because I mean, I think the biggest thing, for any aspiring designer or instructor is, be there, show up and be around for everything. And, that's, but my role is definitely not design oriented at all. And I'm getting a message saying my internet connection is unstable. So I'm hoping you guys got all that.
Yeah. You're still good. Yeah. You're
okay.
On
Thank
there.
God. Yeah. Yeah, that's my role.
All right. So it's some more
Dan?
nuts and bolts oriented. Dan, what about you?
Yeah. I mean, the last 17, 18, and 19, I was a battery coordinator. So really day-to-day full drumline stuff. I also have a visual stake. So I kind of craft the visual identity of the drumline. I always work closely with Travis when we're doing this kind of stuff, and he's a major contributor, but that's something that I specifically like to think about and cultivate. So the way that Crown's drumline like plays as it relates to movement. So it's like a super synthesized idea, like the way that we move our hands and the way that we move our bodies and do body. It's really top down, bottom up, left, right, everything. It's very intentional, player friendly type of thing. And we've really discovered our own kind of style, I think, since 17. So doing a bit of that, I guess choreo, running drumline day to day, all the lots with the bald guy, obviously that's me. And then running some perk ensemble too, honestly, and getting the chance to give feedback to the full Crown percussion ensemble, and at times the full core. Travis, Sean, and I would rotate who was like percussion focused and full ensemble. Sometimes someone was off, and the three of us really, we are on various tiers of the percussion and the full core. In 2020, I was moved into a production manager role. So I was the assistant to the artistic director and program coordinator, Rick Subel. Obviously that never got really seen through. I was supposed to be doing a lot of that day-to-day stuff in terms of coordinating the program, music to visual, audio to visual, etc. And that was more of spring training tour type stuff and never really came to fruition, but I was involved in the design throughout the course of 2020. And then this year I'm moving back into just a percussion staff role, as I'm currently like trying to survive this pandemic and just trying to stay afloat with that. And honestly, we don't know totally what drum corps is going to be. So currently I'm kind of having a couple normal jobs, you could say. But like, for example, like it's super weird. Like in 2016, like Sean and Travis both like co-ran the drum line. In 2017, me and Sean co-ran the drum line. So there's been this like very natural overlap of all of us. And like, I think that's where a lot of the good of Crown's drumline specifically comes from. Like they're super creative and different looking because of the look and the style that we're playing with, but they're super precise and clean because like what Sean does. And, our book is really, I think, as integrated as it's ever been with this arrangement of people, or like different arrangement of people, because of the way Travis is able to work with Tom and also be on the ground all the time. So there's like a real, I don't know, there's always like a dovetailing of roles, and none of us are too boxed into a single role at Crown. And this year, even, hoping that 21 happens, we've arranged it in a different way, but with a lot of really strong people who have varied skill sets. So it's kind of more of the same that way, I would say. Hybrid.
Yeah. We always have multiple people that could stand in front of the drum line and make them better. And we frequently kind of trade off, both to keep ourselves fresh and to keep the information a little fresh to the members. Because we went from like 15 and 16 when like me and Sean were half the battery staff there, and we were
wow.
the four of us were there the whole time, and it was a very like, and I'm sure a lot of corps still do that. That was kind of like the thing, to just have like the snare techs, or the techs rather, just be there all the time. And the last few years, we've kind of opened up the staff in the sense that we have more people rotating in and out. Like, we try to always keep it to the same number at a time, but just fresh information, different perspectives. Like Dan said, not very boxed in. It's been very fluid.
Yeah, that's interesting. So a lot of things that we've heard from other guests that we've had on this series, they've really talked about, how the consistency and trust amongst their staff over years have really helped to drive them to success. And it sounds like you guys have a kind of similar setup. Do you think that consistency is really what's kind of driven you to the success that you've had over the past 5 or 6 years?
Oh, definitely. Is this my question? I forget.
You can take it. Any of us can answer, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. No, I think definitely it's the same thing we were talking about with building the culture in indoor. We've been building a culture at Crown, or doing our best to, and doing our best to keep it moving linearly, and DCI, especially the top, there's 9 or 10 great percussion ensembles every year. So you're never going to move linearly towards winning, unless you win 4 times in a row and you're just kind of there. But yeah, it's definitely been the consistency in the staff and the process that has led to the increased success. And it's off the field too, like I always think of it as a comprehensive approach. It's not just about what we're saying or what we're writing, but about how the members feel, and like the player friendly techniques, the player friendly, like, hey, we've been pushing them, it's really hot, maybe we should cut this block short. Or maybe, hey, like, guys, like, I think that gives us the latitude to say, hey, like, we gave you some time on the end a couple days ago. Now we really need to push through this. And it kind of, it's little things like that to like get everyone on the same team and feel like you're all going through it together. And I think it also helps that, like we said, we're the 3 of us and some other people are there like all the time, even though we might not always be out on the field. We're very much in the thick of it with them, and kind of just building like a cohesive relationship, member to staff.
Yeah. So you talk about that culture a lot with Mason and now with Crown. What kind of define that? Like, what does that cultural aspect mean to you, and what does that actually look like at Crown?
Yeah, I mean, sorry, Sean, you want to jump in?
I don't mind, Dan. You go ahead.
I think Sean has a huge contributing factor to this with the whole core. I think in terms of the drumline culture, the things that we really have our hooks in, it's like, you're going to be watching the YouTube videos of yourself, almost, at least Travis and we were right on that generation where YouTube really kicked off, 8, 9, 10, 11-ish area. And you become aware of your medium a little bit more. And the medium isn't always just live. It's also through the internet. And it's like, we want to be cool. We want to be popular. I want my drumline to be liked globally. You know what I mean? We don't want to be like niche to the point that it's, we're not likable. And polarizing, I'll take. Crown might be polarizing too. Actually, that's a different conversation. But I think we think about how the kids are going to perceive their own product, and we care a tremendous amount about that. And we talk to them about that, and they come to understand how they contribute to that. And that's why you see the ownership that you see with their playing. But Sean, jump in about the core. I think is related, but slightly different too.
Yeah, I think the culture of the core, relates a lot to the design choices that are made for Carolina Crown. Very physical design choices are made at Carolina Crown, meaning you're going to play all the time. You're going to march fast all the time. The guard is spinning and moving all the time. And I mean, we really, to the sake where it's excessive demand, and it's the show is very physical and requires a lot of hard work. And it's really hard to have a show like that, but that doesn't require you to rehearse in the same way. You know, if the show has those elements, rehearsal has to take on that atmosphere. And I know that right now in Crown, the conversation of the culture, I would say the culture is evolving at Crown, because we are aware that the members are working incredibly hard out there. And sometimes that demand in today's modern era of drum corps and design, sometimes that demand doesn't receive the credit that maybe it used to, you know. And it's hard to generalize these things, so
Sure.
take everything with a grain of salt. But I know that for me, the culture at Crown has been one of like, how do we work hard but not like kill ourselves, essentially, you know, and not wash ourselves out and not get into those mindless reps, you know, that hard work and repetition can create, you know. And it's and I'm at least proud to say that conversation is definitely started at Crown, and there's steps. I know especially in the drum line, we're really being aware of that element, and just being aware of what we're asking the members to do, and kind of measuring the reward for their hard work, and trying to make the most out of that equation, you know, so that everybody benefits. The design, because we don't want to, at the same time, we don't want to sacrifice every element of our design so the kids are a little less sweaty at the end of the day, you know. But there is a little bit of that, to be honest, you know. And it's very, very difficult. I mean, it's you know, our design team is maybe one of the more experienced design teams in DCI, minus maybe one of the West Coast groups, you know. You know, a lot of our designers started in the 80s. A lot of our designers helped push us out of asymmetrical drill or symmetrical drill, and, you know, way more. I mean, Tom Hannum is like the father of like musicality in drum books, you know. And to make a long story short, the culture at Crown is one of hard work, I would say. It really is. We are a core where when you come in, you're signing up for some grueling reps, but there is this huge desire to make sure that you know, we're aware of that. I mean, this last summer, we gave the members a block off once every 2 weeks during spring training. To put that into perspective, my first year at Crown, the drum line, I know the first 5 weeks, we did not have one block off, not one rep off. I mean, it was no. And when we brought that idea up, it was like, what are you talking about? We have too much to do, you know. And and like I said, that culture is evolving at Crown in a really positive way, you know. And it's going to be it's a difficult journey, you know. I mean, culture is such a big part of the identity of a corps, and it takes just as long to modify as it did to get to its current state, you know.
Yeah, and it's interesting to hear you say that, because, you know, I was a member of Carolina Crown, close to 15 years ago. Yikes, getting old. And we talked about a lot of the same things that you're saying, where it's like, you know, we're trying to take these next steps as a drum corps to move up, the competitive ranks. And in order to do that, we need everything to not be such a grind. So that way we have energy, when we get to the show to do the things that we need to do. And it was a lot about talking about how we can work smarter and not necessarily work harder than everyone. Because I just remember, and I'm sure, climate is doing what it's doing. And spring training in South Carolina or Boiling Springs, North Carolina was pretty warm. And there was not necessarily abundant shade, especially on those ensemble fields and all of that stuff. So it was hard. Just being out there without even doing anything would be difficult, but to run around all day and play your instrument and, deal with all of that physical exertion, that's hard.
Yeah, definitely is. I think, well, first, Mike, so the trees are definitely bigger at Gardner-Webb University, where we do it all day. So there's more shade out there than there was 15 years ago. And the dirt field that you guys used to do ensemble on is now AstroTurf. So, honestly, my guess is that AstroTurf might have been paid for by Carolina Crown's fee for moving out there.
It's certainly
could
possible.
Yes.
Yeah,
we have this beautiful lake zone, the name of which is not appropriate for this particular webinar. But we had this little lake that we rehearsed at all the time, and the staff did this funny thing where it was like we would play in the morning, we would be facing away from the lake, and if we played well in the morning, we got to turn around and face the lake. So we had the view in the afternoon, and
what a reward.
Yeah. Hey, it's just like those little things, man. Like that's
scared of lake.
Yeah.
Insane.
Somebody just made a comment about this, and I think they're dead right. Like, the culture is like concrete. It's malleable at first, but it hardens over time. And once it's hardened, it's very hard to change, and I think we're in the latter part of his comment there, where we recognize the need for evolution, but it's difficult because everybody's got to buy in, everybody's got to see it through that lens. And as we know, the activity is so broad with bodywork, choreography, electronics, the equipment, the props.
It changes so fast.
Yeah, there's so many elements, and the food truck at Crown contributes to our culture. Every little it really does. And so it's really, there's a lot of facets to manage with that. Quick plug: the food has gotten a little bit better at Crown over the years. So,
definitely.
It was, maybe not Michelin star worthy when I was a member, but I'm glad to hear that it's gotten better.
Yeah.
All right. Well, awesome. Well, this has been a really great conversation. Couple things before we get out of here. So if I'm a, upper division college student or someone that's a younger instructor that's looking to be you guys in the future, experience the same success that you guys have had, what are 3 do's that each of you have or they could be don'ts for that person to do in order to be successful?
If I can go first here.
Yeah.
I would say number 1, march and participate in the activity as long as you can. That will lead to that's your networking when you're that age. That's where, and also, we tend, when we get towards that, 19, 20, those age out type of years, we start to think, okay, I'm starting to figure this out. And you really don't, it's 20 years later for me, and I'm still trying to tell myself, you don't have it figured out. You got to retool the shit, whatever. But I would say, I didn't march my age out indoor year. Big regret. For me, not only because Blue Knights actually won percussion PIW that year, 03, but also just because I'm teaching my best when I'm really thinking about what the members are feeling and going through. And the more you get removed from that over the years, you'll see a difference in the way you teach, and I would just recommend holding on to those participation years as they're gold for you. You don't get those back. I I could take 5 years of teaching off right now and come back to it maybe, but like you can't get that with marching. And that leads to my second thing. It's put yourself in an environment where everybody's better than you, and whether it's designing, teaching, and not everybody is going to be able to have that opportunity. It's hard to find those opportunities where like, oh, sweet, I can come in and work a weekend with Rhythm X. So I can go in there. Sweet, I got a drum corps teaching gig. Awesome. Those are, sometimes you got to be at the right place at the right time for those opportunities, which is again why I encourage you to keep marching all you can for all your years, because you'll meet other people that go off and and networking is huge in this if this is going to be your career, networking might be everything, to be honest. And I think so that'd be my second one. And my third one is just do what we're doing right now. Study. Don't think just like when you were a member, you had to practice to keep your chops up. It's the same thing as a designer. Like I'm really fortunate right now where I've literally been able to practice Pieware, which is the drill writing software I use. Pieware came out with this whole like homeschool kind of webinar where every Wednesday, they had Tim Fairbanks, Mike Gaines got on there for a while. I mean, it was outstanding. And I'm like I'm using the program in a very different way than I did even 7 months ago. And when I always used to think, man, you can't go to school to write drill. And then I hear Michael Gaines talk about like, well, yeah, you can't go to school to write drill, but you can study elements of design. You can study you can study color theory. You can study this. There is studyable, if that's a word, elements of our activity. And that's, and for me, I'm trying to go through that process right now, and keep my chops up. But those would be my three big do's.
Yeah, I think being a lifelong learner is like such a key to success too. I mean, really like anything, like even in my day job, I'm contacting people that work for other state governments, finding out how they do certain processes that we're having challenges with, and just, learning why they do things the way that they do and figuring out if I can apply it to what I do. And, you doing that for, learning drill or learning how to use Pieware better, or really anybody just, learning a new skill set. This pandemic time, I think, is a great time to figure out something else. And then you're going to be able to take that skill set and apply it to the marching arts. So I think that's really, really good.
Yep.
Yeah, right. Man, you just nailed a lot of that I would have said. Just to spin off that more. I think it's something, if you want to, and this is true for anything, like Mike just said, like if you want to be successful at the highest levels of something, you have to make some sort of substantial commitment to it. Like I did, I went to college. It ended up taking me like 8 years to finish undergrad and a master's degree, just because I was not willing to disengage from the activity, because I knew it was my passion. I knew it was something I love to do. Like Sean said, you really should see through as much marching as you can. Don't be afraid to take grunt jobs after that, because that's how you get picked up or noticed or hired to the job that you want, is by those people like watching you do the jobs that are maybe less desirable. Like Tom Monks called me to go to Crown because I was out there, on the field at Blue Stars, busting my hump with a snare drum on, for no recognition, for no whatever, just because it was like the right thing to do or whatever. So just keep attacking it, keep going at it. And you gotta put the time in one way or another. Like Sean said, be a lifelong learner, be humble, always grow, always be willing to kind of recognize when you could have done something better. I think that's like a good rule of life, to be able to admit fault and to admit that you didn't really have the best approach to something, and be able to adapt and then grow from that, I would say. So
yeah, really, really strong there. Dan?
Life lessons with Travis.
Yeah.
For me, from my standpoint, like I feel like people want to become designers who don't like love the activity. So if you're not that into it, don't try to do it. It's so much work and it's not a lot of money. And there's so many good people. It's like, if you're not like totally, if you're considering your passion for getting into it, it's probably not there. Like, we found ourselves here without much, thought behind it. Just like we are talking about those CWP days, bring it back to that. It wasn't like, should I be doing this? Should I be doing this? It was like, I'm going to do this. I'm showing up. This is what I know. I started marching when I was 14. So it has been over 50% of my like life. So not too much of a choice at this point. It just is that it's not as binary as you think, like you don't just go from, like, same with you. I mean, there was a day where it was your first day judging DCI, but it's not as straightforward as that. So it's a real lifelong commitment. And for me, like, I'm the biggest fan and hater critic of the activity. Travis knows so well. Like, I am a fan when the show is good. I'll know exactly why it's good. I'll explain every part of it to you and I'll like love it. And like, I hold some shows very closely, but I'm a huge critic of everyone. And I don't mean to like be a, smack talker, but I am a judge, and I am also a designer and I'm also a teacher. And like, if I'm not looking at something as objectively as I believe people are looking at me, I'm like missing something. I miss, oh, that was great. Dirty triple roll. Oh, that was great. Wrong notes. Like, that's not what this is about. A lot of this activity and why it's cool is the excellence, and that the moments where things click is why we all like kind of feed off of this. Is like, you feel that you're talking about the visceral effect, or if you're on the field and you're in front of a really great drumline DCI finals, I mean, that's like a memory you're always gonna have. And it's like, I really fight for those memories, but it takes a lot to do that. So I think I'm like a huge critic of like I'm a huge critic of my groups, and that's why they get to where they are. Because it's not really that fluffy for most of the time, to be honest. It's pretty transparent for a lot of it. So I think you have to be like a nurturer and a coach and a teacher and a critic and, an analyst and a bully sometimes, maybe, maybe not anymore. It's 2020, but dude, this is physical, man. And sometimes raising your voice whips people. It whips people into shape, and they're trying to run in the heat. And it's like, I don't see football coaches. Will you please reset? Like,
Please
so
reset.
I believe, like, please. Yeah. So it's like, dude, I believe in getting that real energy going, and people construe that as anger, but it's never anger. It's that, like, I like to coach a lot. So you have to have a passion for wearing all those hats and knowing when to wear which one. And like, dude, the person I am at Crown and the person I am at Mason are so different. Like, at Mason, I make the group dirty. At Crown, I make the group clean. I'm doing like opposite jobs. So it's like fun that this activity affords you a real fluidity of personhood. Like I get to see Sean be a very different person depending on our interaction and what group we're interacting over. Same with Travis. I think Travis has a specialty in administration that's very important in our activity aside from his design skills. And I have a little bit of that, and Sean has his side of that. So it's like, again, these overlapping nodes, and you have to embrace that this isn't like you wake up and it's the same job all the time. There's like a real flexibility you have to have that makes you a valuable candidate for a job. Like, if you only have one skill set, someone has two. So I think it's like you have to really want to try to build up your kind of artillery of skills and thought processes and the way you deliver information and see things. So it's been crazy. It's like, you don't really know, like, our identities change with the designs. Like, you see these shows changes because we've evolved as people too. I was 22 years old and now I'm 30. So yeah, the designs change, and it's cool because you look back, you're like, look at, you're going to listen to these tapes, these archives of tapes, and you're going to be like, oh no, 2013 versus 2021 or whatever. Like, oh man, I know you listen to those a lot, right? So it's just like the same deal. Like this, you're got to be open to evolving yourself without the pain. A lot of pain could be, self-inflicted in that process.
Well, and that's, I mean, for me, like, that's the way you learn. Is it's just like brutal truth. Like, if I'm teaching a group, I'm going to watch recordings of that group, and, Rasheed Wallace used to say, ball don't lie. Well, tapes don't lie either, like, it is what it is. And it might not be what you want to see, or sometimes it is what you want to see. And it's like, all right, I got that one. But I mean, that's the best way to do it, because it's just brutal honesty. And like, even as a judge, you know, I try to listen to the tapes every single time I go out and do a gig. If I'm flying out there, I try to listen to all the tapes on the way home. And I'll make notes of, it's like, oh man, that's a phrase that I've used like 50 times today. Like, maybe, you know, you said that one a lot. You don't need to say that one again. But, you know, it's just,
Awesome.
you guys know, you get into long days and it's just like, that's a phrase that just sticks with you. And it's like, you just say it a lot. I mean,
Yeah.
the intent is there and it makes sense for what it is, but it's just like, could I not figure out another way to say it aside from these 3 words? But yeah, I mean, it's all about those reps and just being honest with yourself. And, you know, I think you guys do a good job of, you know, creating that culture and creating that trust with those members. So that way, you know, even if you've got to get onto them to reset, or you raise your voice like that football coach, they don't take it as, you know, you're just kicking their butt to kick their butt. They know that you've got their back 150%, and you're going to go into battle together. It's not you versus them. So, you know, I think if you can have that sort of culture, like, that's a good way to do it. And that's a way to turn it on to where, like, you know, if rehearsal is a little bit sluggish for whatever reason, that's a way to just kick that energy up. So,
Yeah. What would yours be? What are your dues as a DCI WGI judge at your young age?
oh man, I mean, a lot of what you guys said, I mean, for me, like, being a lifelong learner is like the biggest thing that you could possibly be. Because I mean, I learned so much watching these shows where it's like, you know, I'll watch the shows, like the memory show, where it's like, I'll watch it and like, my job is not to necessarily know what the story arc is. I'm a nuts and bolts analysis judge. But I'll watch that show and I'll take away something from it, and then I'm going to go and try to figure out what the show was, or figure out what caused me to feel a certain way while watching that show. And then I apply that to, you know, what I do at Franklin High School, or what I did at Mount Juliet when I was there. And, you know, just doing that. I mean, I've taken on learning photography over the course of the past year or so. And like, it's just another way where it's like, you know, I work on drumming a lot, and, you know, I use those skills of like going through and like learning something and then apply it to a different medium. And then, you know, you just always learn something about yourself, or, you know, you learn something through that process that you can apply back to something that you have a little bit more subject matter expertise in. But, you know, I guess learning is huge. Networking is so big. I mean, I've been so fortunate to have amazing mentors, you know, and just growing up where I did, you know, working with Brett Kuhn as a young kid, and like not even realizing what that really meant until later in life. You know, that was huge for me. And he's been such an impactful person in my life, because it was like when I started writing for Palmetto 12 years ago, you know, I would send him chunks of music, and then I would send him to Eric Johnson or send him to other people. And they would, like, I wanted them to be like, oh, this is so good, you really nailed it. And then he would send me an email that's like this long, that's like, this is trash. Like, I remember specifically, he sent me one that was like one of the first times, and it was just like, remember that we're making music here. And I was just like, oh man, like, brutal.
But it
But,
helps
like,
you, like you said.
that's what I needed. That's what I needed to hear. And like, you know, we applied that. I really applied that to what I was doing from a compositional standpoint the rest of that year. And what happened? We won Independent Open at WGI. I mean, not to say like that was the catalyst or the reason why we were successful, but like, that's something that when I write a show now, I'm always cognizant of that. It's always like, what's the musical hierarchy here? You know, what does it really matter if the marimbas are playing this run, if the, you know, the trumpets are playing in a similar frequency range and they're the musical focus? Like, get the marimbas out of there, or give them something that's going to be supportive. You know, we're trying to make music here, not just making a bunch of noises that come together and it's just loud sounds, you know?
Yeah.
So I think, you know, without that network, you know, that's something that, you know, it's just easy to bounce ideas off of people, or, you know, and then like you guys were talking about with jobs and opportunities, that breeds from that network that you have and those people that you cultivate close with you. So, you know, surround yourself with people that are successful, surround yourself with people that, you know, have an idea of what they're doing, because you're going to be able to take cues from them to be able to, further yourself personally and professionally. I always like to surround myself with good people first. And it's always great if those people are also really good at what they do, but, I don't really want to be around bad people that, also might be good at drumming, because when with my students, I want my students, like, 99% of them are not going to be music educators. They're not going to go into this as their career. So I want them to learn from people that have been successful. People like Dan Vargason is someone that I teach with at Franklin. And Dan March Mystique, I mean, he's a world-class player, like great educator. He was a band director, but like now he's a CPA. He went and got another bachelor's degree, I mean, in a completely different field. And man, he's like someone that I look up to so much. Like he's just figured out a lot of different ways to, be a good person. He's so kind to the kids, but like what you guys do, he just creates that buy-in by creating a culture where they know that he's ready to go to war for them. And, that's someone that like I really, really look up to, not only from a personal or a professional standpoint with teaching and all that stuff, but also just from like personal standpoint. Like if I've got a question about what I'm going to do with something in life, I'm going to ask Dan what he would do in that situation. And, surround yourself with those people as well, because they're going to be the ones that can identify a good opportunity versus a great opportunity.
Yeah.
So that's like not three at all. And that's, in a million different directions. And you guys touched on a lot of it, but that's, kind of a little bit of my thought process, and then just, getting lucky, being in the right place and, having a good day to where someone sees you and recognizes what you can do. I mean, just always be on,
Yep.
So cool. Well, what do you guys have going on now? What do you have anything to plug? I know George Mason is doing some stuff this spring. What does that look like? Where can people go and join, or how can they be a part of it?
Go ahead, Dan.
I mean, yeah, we have a couple different tracks going on with Mason. I'm not going to, say too much about them because just with the ongoing COVID situation, things are changing. Anyone that sounds like everything's operating like it should be, it's a facade. So don't be fooled. But for us right now, we have 3 tracks. One of them is an asynchronous curriculum. So we're creating these like incredibly awesome, like really, really high produced videos, instructional videos for both battery and fret ensemble from our staff. So those are all asynchronous. You pay like $100 and then you get on this educational track. You get access to the entire library of videos and you can submit anything you want. And you basically get one-on-one feedback with one of our instructors. So that's super dope. And what a great time to get better. Then we're putting together some different performance opportunities with the spring, trying to put something out. We've currently been calling it a visual album. It's going to be a couple of different tracks. We have a really, really strong production team at the Mason office. So we are trying to put some in like a couple music videos out featuring a couple different people in some styles that honestly are meant to progress our identity just like a program would. So we're really not looking to take the year off, at least from a like design identity, putting a product out there that has our brand on it. But who knows, we are again planning and flexible, and we're planning to the point that we can't plan anymore. And then either we're going to do it or we're going to have to cancel it because of COVID. So right now we're in there, we're going, and we are meeting and people are writing music, and it's really cool. It's really special. I'm excited about that. And then we also have a third track right now for Mason, which is a consultant track. We're basically providing free consultation to any group. This is meant to help support the East Coast area specifically. We have stakes in this area as designers that work in Virginia, as people that come from Delaware and Connecticut. Sean, as someone who frequents the East Coast and lives on it a lot of the year, and certainly identifies with it as a past cadet. And I mean that last part. We are looking to make this whole area better. That's why we judge AIA. That's why we are looking to just make a great impact on the area, period, not just through our own group, but through offering people our opinions, and just like you're doing right now. So we do have like a staff consultation program right now where you can pick through an array of our staff, and we will consult with you on any level of your program that has a need. So GMU, there's a lot going on. And we're just chugging right now until we can't chug anymore. So it's been pretty crazy. But we're not trying to put the idea out there that we're doing a drumline show and filming it. No, we're not doing that. We don't think that's a realistic or necessarily appropriate thing to do right It just doesn't feel right. So we decided to, we made our call. George Mason put out, we weren't having a traditional ensemble in like July. We were like the first group of any group. So it's pretty crazy because people are hitting something like, you're so brave. You're so brave. Like, oh, no, we just pulled the plug because we see the writing on the wall. Are you looking at the graphs? Like, come on. So it's been different. I definitely missed the conventional season. Like, I'm much more just like, I want to like put a drumline show together, and I won't do that. Like, we could design a future show, but we always design for our group. So we can't, it wouldn't be right. It wouldn't be appropriate. So we're doing something a little different for sure.
That's cool, man. I love that evolution. And I think this time has been a good time for groups to kind of take a look at what their process is and what they do, or what services they offer to people, and, figure out how they can impact their communities around them. I know, Shane has been really big with that for Mystique around here. And it's awesome to see that you guys are doing that on the East Coast. So that's really, really cool. You guys have anything else that's going on? Anything else that you want to plug?
If you need a drill rider, holler at me.
Sean McElroy is available.
I definitely am available. Yeah, unfortunately, all the areas that I ride drill in are hit pretty hard by this, and are taking it very, very seriously. So it's.
You need to get some gigs in New Zealand where they've eradicated it.
Auckland, here I come.
Yeah, there you go.
It's a long flight to Dayton.
Yeah. Don't worry. I'll do it still. Don't matter.
All right. Well, Travis, you got anything going on?
Just the Crown registration is open. I think they've branded it as Crown 101, but it's essentially just an online method of auditioning for the potential 2021 season. Which, DCI and these drum corps, they're operating right now as if it might be able to happen. We'll see. But I think, like Dan said, with our spring project at Mason, the best way is to just plan as well as you can. And you kind of got to treat it as if it's going to happen, and then, pull the plug when it doesn't, to an extent. So yeah, come try out for Crown.
Nice. All right. Well, awesome. Fellas, this has been a great conversation. It's always awesome to talk to you guys, and especially to learn a little bit more about the inner workings of why you do the things that you do. So thank you so much for sharing your expertise and your experience with everybody here that joined live, and those that will catch it on the replay and on YouTube. So we certainly appreciate it. Before we get out of here, I got to say my thank yous to ADLA, CWE, and SCGC for their continued support of the Workshop Wednesday series, even on this special Tuesday edition. Next week, we're going to be back for the finale of Workshop Wednesday 2020. We're going to have another all-star panel of guests on here. We're going to have Tom Rarick, Roger Carter, and Kevin Shaw. So we're going to be learning a little bit about the Bluecoats and a little bit about Broken City and how they do the things that they do. And that'll cap it off for 2020. So thank you guys so much for attending. Make sure you go to www.musicchunks.com, get yourself that monthly subscription, learn some of those Tom Rarick beats before he's here next Wednesday, because he's going to want to know who learned them and who didn't. So
that was awesome.
So, all right. Well, everybody have a good night, and I will see you next Wednesday.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it.